The Zohar sighed, the Zohar groans in the end of Parashat Vayera. It says, Vay alahu zimnad yaled Ishmael be'alma v'itgazar. Oy, on that time that Ishmael was born. Oy alahu zman shenolad Ishmael ba'olam ve'nimol. On top of that, his nimol. מה עבד קודש הבריחו הרחק לה ולבני ישראל מדבקותה דיללה. הקדוש ברוך הוא took them out from the Kedusha, from being nidbak in the Kedusha Elyona. The Zohar continues and says, what will happen in the end of days? זמינים בני ישמעאל להתערק רבים תקיפין בעלמה. בני ישמעאל will, in the end of days, cause a lot of terrible wars. זמינים בני ישראל להתערק רבין, fights, wars, תקיפין, very strong. בעלמה, in the entire world. להתכנשה בני אדום עליו. Who's going to be the war against? בני אדום. So keep this in mind, these two names, בני אדום and בני ישמעאל. בני אדום, it is Rome, בני אדום is Rome, which is considered the Christians. This is how the Abarbanel in Yeshaya brings in length, explains in length that it's all the same. בני אדום, which is Esav, מן האדום האדום הזה, which is Rome, which destroyed our Bet HaMikdash, which is situated in Italy at the time, Rome shel Italia, that the Gemara speaks about, that the Malach put his sword into that place and Italy was created, and that is the same Italy that destroyed our house. And this is where the Vatican is, the Christian power, and it is today who it is today, but there's a war over here between two powers, it says in the Zohar. One is Bnei Ishmael, and one is Bnei Edom. V'tarun krava behu. One would fight against the other. Chad al yama, chad al yabeshta, v'chad samuch l'Yerushalayim. Where would the wars take place? One at the land, one at the sea, and one close to Yerushalayim. So this is very interesting. Ishmael is not close to Yerushalayim. Ishmael are all over the Middle East, and today they're all over the world. Bnei Edom are not close to Yerushalayim. You can say Bnei Edom is America, Europe, but what does that have to do with Yerushalayim? You see that the Zohar already tells you that the wars will be done close to Yerushalayim. Vishletuni len beilen v'ara kadisha la'at masar levnei Edom. There would be fighting, and one would be maser. One would be sholet. One would overpower the other, and vice versa. Then another very strong power, another strong country, another strong nation will come from far away. Where is far away? I can't tell you, the Zohar doesn't say, but it could be that it means China. It could be that it's not that far, and we're talking about Iran. I don't know. Could be that this is talking about a different V'igach brau krava tlat yarchin. This fight would be al Romi chayava. So I would say maybe it's America, but Romi could be represents. It seems like Rome represents America, which is the Christian power. So they'll fight Romi. V'igach b'krava tlat yarchin. This fight will take place 3 months. V'itkanshun taman amamya v'plun b'idaihu. And those powers, those other powers, the allies of the Ishmaelim will fall in their hand. Adit kenashut kol bnei Edom ala mikol shafei alma. Until then, afterwards, then Hashem will appear. Now, when we take a look at these nevuot, actually, they're pretty clear in few Gemarot. For instance, the Gemara in Yuma, Daf Yud, brings clearly what will happen in the end of day. The Gemara in Yuma Daf Yud says the following, that Atida paras shetipol beyad Romi. So the Gemara tells us exactly who are those nations. Paras, Iran. Iran will fall in the hand of Rome. So you see, up to 10 years ago, 20 years ago, Iran wasn't the world power. It was just another country. They were fighting not long ago, Iran, Iraq. They weren't just another country. Today it's a world power, and it also leads the the power of the Ishmaelim. And eventually, in the end, how will it turn out? Paras will fall in the hands of Rome. עם הרב אין בן דוד בת שתפשוט מלכות רומי הרשעה בכל העולם כולו 9 חודשים. Then מלכות Rome will conquer and rule over the world 9 months. The Gemara in Avodah Zarah, Daf Gimel, tells us that up to then, Paras will have a power, and only then it will be given over to Rome. So this is what it says in the Tosfot in Avodah Zarah, right in the beginning. Okay, so over here it's interesting that דף ב' עמוד ב', תוספות says, עד אמרינן עתידה פרס שתיפול ביד רומי, היינו סמוך לביאת המשיח, which means Rome and Paras, Persia, Iran, will rule until Mashiach come, and right before he comes, it says over here, עתידה פרס שתיפול ביד רומי, and then מלכות רומי תפשוט על כל העולם 9 חודשים. Now it's very interesting that in the end of days, when Paras will cause a lot of wars, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will appear and ask who wants to get rewarded. Every nation will come to get rewarded, and Hashem would say, okay, what's your zchuyot? What did you do in the world? Why should I reward you? Why do you need that reward? And what did you do to deserve it? So each nation says whatever they say. For instance, when he asks Rome, he says that הרבה מחצאות עשינו, הרבה כסף הזהב עשינו, וכולם לא עשינו בשביל ישראל. We made a lot of money, and we built up a lot of bridges, and so on and so forth, and we did that for Am Israel. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, no, that's everything you did for yourself, as it's explained over here. יצאו בפחי נפש, יצאה מלכות רומי, נכנסה מלכות פרס אחריה. Paras, Iran, comes afterwards. So he asked them, okay, what did you do? So they say like this, במה עסקתם? ריבונו של עולם, הרבה גשרים גשרנו, we made bridges, הרבה כרכים כבשנו, we conquered a lot of land, a lot of cities, הרבה מלחמות עשינו, וכולם לא עשינו אלה בשביל ישראל כדי שיתעסקו בתורה, the chutzpah to say such things. But whatever it is, they say that, but take a look at the response of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He says to them, look, everything you did for yourself. You say you built bridges, that was for yourself. You conquered cities, that was in order to collect taxes and so on. And then milchamot, ani asiti. You did wars? Kadosh Baruch Hu doesn't say, wars you did for yourself, for your own benefit, to be able to get money and to get power and to... milchamot? Ani asiti. You didn't do the wars. Shenemar Hashem ish milchama. Which means, it's very interesting, HaKadosh Baruch Hu teaches us over here that all the wars that we experience in the world, don't think it's anything but HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Everything could be that somebody puts his hand and has some kind of benefit out of it, like, for instance, building bridges, building cities, building bathhouses, and so on, making money. But wars are totally just so HaKadosh Baruch Hu's work. It's him doing the entire thing. So when we take a look at with that mindset, it gives us a totally different perspective that everything that happens in the world is wars that HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself operates. Now that we see that, we really like to see what will happen in the end of days. So it's so interesting that if you go to the sources, you don't need to go any place else but the sources, and you see that those sources tell us exactly what will happen in the end of days. And one of the most fascinating things is the nevuah of Bil'am HaRasha. Bil'am HaRasha gives out 3 nevuot, and in the end nevuah, the third nevuah, the final nevuah, the final prophecy, he tells Balak exactly what will happen in the end of days when Mashiach will come. And he says to him the following thing. וישם משלו ויאמר, נאום בלעם בנו באור, נאום הגבר שתו מעין. And he starts and he says like this, הראינו ולא עתה. אשורנו ולא קרוב. The Ramban says over here, הנבואה הזאת לימות המשיח היא. כי כל נבואותיו מוסיפות בעתידות, and this goes all the way to the Mashiach, which means there's different נבואות for different timing. But this נבואה that Bilam says, הראינו, I see him. I see him. Who's him? The Ramban says he refers to the Mashiach. I see the Mashiach, ולא עתה. It's not now. אשורנו, I see, ולא קרוב. It's not close by, which means this is a נבואה for the final end time. And he says the following thing. דרך כוכב מיעקב וקם שבט מישראל. The כוכב, the star will rise, שבט מישראל, which also refers, says the Ramban, to the Mashiach. This goes, בעבור כי המשיח יקבץ נדחי ישראל מקצה הארץ ימשילנו לכוכב. Which means this again is a נבואה for the Mashiach himself. And what will happen in the end of time. And let's see if you read those nevuot, it's like you're reading today's news, because things that are happening in front of our eyes that didn't happen throughout history, nothing close like to anything of what's happening today is happening it didn't happen throughout history, and we see that those nevuot are precisely of what's happening right now. And take a look what it says over here. He says like this. וירד מיעקב והביא צעיר מאיר. וירא את העמלק. First of all, he goes on Amalek. Amalek is the source of evil. He says Amalek will, in the final days, will be destroyed. Now Amalek is the tzir haresha. That's the worst of the evil. And we don't know exactly who's Amalek, but there are certain indications of who should be Amalek, and those Amalekim will be destroyed for all the evil things that they did to Am Yisrael throughout history, and for going to fight the very first fight with Am Yisrael when they came out of Mitzrayim. They'll be wiped out in the end of days. Akeni, says the Ramban over here, refers to Ishmael. Ishmael is the Keni. So he's taking a look at Ishmael. So we have over here again two powers. Edom, which is part of Amalek, is from Edom. So he sees Amalek, and then he sees the Keni. The Keni, as we said, is Ishmael, and he says the following. וישא משלו ויאמר. כן, אבל זה היה בזמנם. מה בסופו של דבר, איך זה התפתח? וישא משלו ויאמר, איתן מושבך ושים בסלע קיניך. What does those words mean? איתן מושבך. You have situated yourself very strongly, you have stronghold in many places. The Ramban says that Etan Moshavecha in Eretz Yisrael. Rashi says, Etan Moshavecha, הלא אתה נתיישבת באיתן ומעוז של ישראל, which means within the land of Israel they have a hold. But the way the others explain is that they have a hold throughout the world, throughout every continent. Take a look at every land in the world now. Europe is totally conquered and taken over by Muslims, and so does many other lands. I don't even know if there's a places, maybe China or things, or Taiwan, maybe, that you don't have them taken over. But they're taken over, and that is something that's happening in front of our eyes, and that's called Eitan Moshavecha. Vesim basela kinecha. It's the same idea. They are strong in there, like you put a stone, a rock, in their nest. So they are very. The reason it says kinecha, it's since it's a parable, it's a mashal, it's a poet. So since the keni, it says over here kinecha. This is how the mefarshim explain. But the idea over here is a clear idea that they have a stronghold in every land, and even in Eretz Yisrael. But all this, this will be in the end to wipe them out completely. How is that going to happen? So we start to explain over here. Says Bilam, וישא משלו ויאמר, אוי מי יחיה משומו אל. What does it mean, misumo el? Says the Gemara, misumo el is Yishmael. Who will live at the time that Ishmael will start raising and getting power. Which means, the Gemara says in Sanhedrin, Yete velo achmine. When Mashiach would come, he should come, I don't want to be there. I don't want to experience it. It's going to be so evil, so brutal, so hard, that I don't want to be there. This is what the Tanaim HaKadoshim said. So therefore, according to that, we can understand the brutality that's happening in front of our eyes today. Not only that, the way it's explained is that they'll be burning things. When we're talking about burning things, it seems like they're burning people alive, and this is what we see in front of our eyes today. So this is the way he starts, again, with groaning. Oy! Which means it's very unusual to start a nevuah with oy. He sees the nevuah, he experiences when he sees the nevuah like he's living there. And now Bilam is not Ishmaeli. They understand Ishmaeli would be laughing and smiling and sending and giving out baklawa if he would see what Bilam would see, right? But Bilam, apparently, with all his wickedness, was not able to tolerate, and he said a sincere oy, otherwise the Torah would not write it. So you can just imagine what they consider to be a laughable, enjoyable event. Bilam couldn't tolerate it. And what will happen then? So this is fascinating what it says over here. V'tzim miyad kitim. What does it mean, tzim? Tzim, Rashi tells us over here, amazing. Tzim, Rashi says, tzim, sfinot gdolot, large ship. Kedichtiv v'tzi adir, huge ship. Now this is very interesting because the indication to Mashiach coming and to the final war would be a war that would be resembled in a huge ship. Now, where would you have the biggest ship? Tzi adir. Tzi adir. So he wrote over here that this very likely to be the aircraft carriers that we see coming to, that are already landed in the shores of Eretz Israel. One of them is the Ford, the other one is the Eisenhower.
There's also a company called Team.
Right. It used to be owned by Israelis. It was sold. But this is a huge thing. It's the largest warship in the world. It's the length of 333 meters, a width of 78 meters, a height of 76 meters. It has hundreds of warplanes.
26 floors.
26 floors.
Okay. 26.
It has hundreds of warplanes. It has a crew of 500 warriors, people that are on the ship. They have missiles that can reach any place. The most precise and destructive missiles that can destroy. Not only that, they have over there nuclear power in there as well. They are protected everything with laser. They fight mostly is so their equipment is so advanced. They fight with laser warheads, not even just sending rockets. So this is something that's unbelievable. If you take a look at the Marines website, it says over there that whenever there's a war starting, right away the leader's first question is, where are the carriers? Which means this is what makes usually the best deterrence in every war. So this is very interesting that what resembles what will happen in the end of days. V'tzim miyad kitim. Who's kitim? Kitim is Bnei Edom. Bnei Edom. So the tzim will come from Bnei Edom. Those huge war carriers, the plane carriers, will come from Bnei Edom. And what will happen? Will they be involved? Maybe not. Maybe they're just there for deterrence. The Bil'am tells us no. V'inu Ashur, v'inu Ever, v'gamu Adei Oved. They will be fighting a war against all those enemies, and eventually they're not going to make it. And then that's the way it ends, ויקום בלעם וילך וישוב למקומו וגם בלק הלך לדרכו. Which means here we have ourselves a נבואה over here that should be taken extremely serious. It's in the Torah הקדושה. It's in the Torah הקדושה. Take a look at what would happen in the end of days. These are nevuot that 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 500 years ago, nobody would imagine how they would just have this recorded in the nevuot, but we wouldn't know how they would come all together, eventually fall each one in its own place, just like a puzzle. So we have the nevuah of Daniel. Daniel, as you know, was the advisor of Nebuchadnezzar. And Nebuchadnezzar, before he knew Daniel, he had many, many advisors, Nebuchadnezzar. So one day or one night, he has a dream. He wakes up in the morning and he calls his advisors, Khartoumim, Khashefim, everybody's invited. He understood that this dream that he had significance. So he asked them, give me interpretation for my dream. So they told him, surely, anything you ask, our dear king, what is the dream? He says, I don't remember the dream. You have to tell me the dream and you have to tell me the interpretation. So they told him, that's not possible. If you tell us the dream, same idea like in Paro, according to some Perushim. If you tell us the dream, we'll be able to tell you the interpretation. If you don't tell us the dream, how could we tell you the interpretation? So he told them, look, I'm not playing games with you. If you don't tell me the dream and the interpretation, I'm killing all of you. And they again said, but it's not possible. Nobody can tell you what you dreamt. Only you know, and we can only give you the pitaron hachalom. Then he was fed up. He said, the next thing you know, everybody has to be slaughtered. Everybody goes on the gallows. Everybody dies. That's it. One of them would be Daniel, because he was also part of the advisors' crew. Then Daniel rose up and said, I can give you I can tell you the dream, I can tell you the interpretation. Now Daniel starts talking. As he's talking, and he tells the king the dream, the king, Nebuchadnezzar, starts remembering. So he was very, very impressed from Daniel. After Daniel gave him the dream and the interpretation, he wanted to bow down to him and worship him. But Daniel told him, no, it's not me, it's HaKadosh Baruch Hu, not me. Well, so what was the dream that he had, Nebuchadnezzar? Daniel explains to him that he saw a statue that was made out of different elements. The head was made out of gold. The stomach, the chest was made out of silver. The stomach was made out of copper. And then the legs... the legs were made... on the thigh, up to the knees, they were made out of metal, barzel, iron. And then the legs themselves, one of them was made out of metal, one of them was made out of clay. And they were, as they were getting close to the toes and the toes themselves, they were changing and they're becoming a mixture of both. Mixture of clay and mixture of metal. And now he starts telling him the interpretation of the dream. He says the head is the king, is the most important king, and that is you, and that is the king of Bavel, which is the king which represented by the gold. It's a Chashuv kingdom empire. Then we go to the chest, which is the silver, which is also Chashuv, not as the gold, but it's Chashuv, and that is Parasu Madai. Going to the stomach, that is Greek, is made out of copper, and obviously there's a lot of depth of understanding why those represented by these elements. But then when it gets to Rome, which is the fourth empire, by the way, it's very interesting that the Ibn Ezra thought that the fourth empire is Ishmael. The Ramban over here in Parashat Balak, the Ramban says that he was wrong in that he counted Ishmael as the fourth empire, and he says the reason Ramban says about Ibn Ezra that the reason that he counted them as a fourth empire is because Nafal Pachdam Alav. He got very scared of them because it's such a strong, such large amount of people and so brutal. So he got scared. So he counted them as an empire. But he says, really, no, they don't belong in an empire. So where do they go? What I'm telling you right now is the Perush of the Malbim, which pretty much is the explanation of others as well. And that is that in the legs, the upper legs, the thighs themselves, up to the knees, that is Rome. Which means up to that time, they'll be ruling by themselves. But then, as time comes, they'll start having that empire shared together with the Ishmaelim. So one would be Ishmaelim, one leg is Ishmaelim, one is the Romans, the Christians. So that is so interesting because and he says the Malbim מאז היו תמיד אחד של ברזל ואחד של חרס, כי אחד יתגבר תמיד ואחד יחלש. The one conquers the other, one goes over the other, one overrides the other. And he says, ולכן לא באר איזה רגל יש של ברזל ואיזה שיש של חרס, כי זה לא קבוע. He doesn't explain the right is Rome and the left is Ishmael. No. Why? Because they keep on changing. One will be stronger than the other. But that's up to the knees. But this is under the knees. This is the legs under the knees. But when it gets to the toes already, or close to the toes, then we said that they are a mixture. Now, what it says over here in the pasuk, very interestingly, is that mixture is going to be mitarvin lehon bizra anasha velo lehon davkin, which means there will be mixing one with the other, as today the Ishmaelim are getting mixed together with all the nations, ולא להון דבקין, לא יהיו שלמים ונדבקים עמם באמת ולב שלם, ודתיהם שונות מדתי שאר האומות, says Rashi, which means, although you would think that they are living together with all the other nations of the world, they're living there, they're making business there, some of them becoming doctors, businessmen, lawyers, whatever you want. So you would think that they are combining pretty well, and they should become part of those nations, right? They should integrate into the nation. That is the whole idea. That's what they say when you bring such people to America, for example. So many people integrated to America. They became Americans, although maybe they keep their religion. But they leave the American style. They don't in any way, Americans don't feel intimidated by them. For example, the Chinese. They live the American life, the American way. They make business here, they become part of the society, and they don't cause any interference in any way. They don't cause a threat to the society. Unlike Ishmael. Ishmael comes there, not only they could integrate very easily because they have all the reasons to do so, but they don't. They stick to whatever they are and they don't integrate, and eventually they cause a threat, because the idea behind Ishmaelim is that slowly they gain power. That is in the charter of in the protocols of the Muslim Brotherhood, that as long as you don't have enough power, you wait to just populate, become more people in the place, and until you gain enough power, and then you go and you fight the natives and you throw them out. So that is the idea of what it says over here, that מתערבין להון בזרע אנשה, they get mixed together with זרע אנשה, with the people, ולא להון דבקין, but rather they don't integrate, they don't become one, they don't become like them. This is how the nevuah that Daniel explains. לא יהיו דבקין דנה עם דנה, just like פרזלה לא מתערב עם חשפה, just like metal doesn't combine with clay, earthenware. They don't combine. And what will happen in the total end, he explains over here, that eventually a stone will come out from the statue and be thrown on it and break the statue, and that represents the Melech HaMashiach that will come and destroy everything in the end of days and conquer everything. And that is, by the way, the nevuah of Bil'am that is said over here. ומחץ פתי מואב, when he says, דרך כוכב מיעקב וקם משבט מישראל, מחץ פתי מואב וקרקר כל בני שת. What does it mean, קרקר כל בני שת? Says the Unkelus, וישלוט בכל בני אנשה. Eventually he will conquer. That's the Mashiach. He will take over. Okay? So now, when we take a look at the final Nevuot, there are a few Nevuot that are pretty clear in the Nevi'im of what will happen in the end of days, and that is, for example, the Nevuah of Yechezkel that we read on Sukkot. It's so interesting that we read it on Sukkot, where everything have started. And it says over here about the war of Gog uMagog. Now, many try to make a gematriot and try to find out who's Gog, who's Magog, but the Malbim over here says that really the name of Gog uMagog, Lo yadanu ata mihem. We don't know who they are until in the end of days, where everything will come to place, and you see the nevuah, the prophecy coming in front of our eyes, then you'll know that this is Gog uMagog. But otherwise, just you should know, says the Malbim, that Gog uMagog are Bnei Edom and Bnei Ishmael. That's what it is. And let's see the Malbim inside. It says like this, the Yechezkel Lamed Yidvar Adonai Elai Lemor, Ben Adam sim panecha el Gog, Eretz HaMagog. נשיא ראש משך ותובל וינבא עליו. Says the Malbim, שים פניך אל גוג. ניבא יחזקאל שבאחרית הימים ילחמו כל העמים סביב לירושלים. Where would be the war? Again, it's so interesting. Out of all the places in the world, they chose where? Yerushalayim. It's so interesting. That is where the war will be. Which means סביב לירושלים, close by to ירושלים. והיו לוחמים מצד אחד מצרים ואשור ואלם, שהם הישמעאלים, so they be the allies of the ישמעאלים, this is one power, והלוחמים מצד שני, משך ותובל, נסיכי אדום, the אדומים. So take a look that the power over here is ישמעאל against אדום. מלכי הצפון ומלכי הצפון, וכולם יהרגו איש אחיו ויפלו בנופלים. So it says here the following thing. ואמרת, כה אמר אדוני אלוהים, הנני אליך גוג נשיא ראש משך ותובל. So it says over here the names of the nations that will be under Malchut Ishmael. And it says like this. פרס, כוש ופוט, איתם כולם מגן וכובע. So the first nation is פרס. says the Malbi, מצד אחד ילכו גם חיל ישמעאל שהם פרס. Who's חיל ישמעאל? Who's the allies? Who's the warriors of Ishmael? פרס, Iran. And then he continues and says, ועם פרס יהיו כוש ופוט. Together with them, you'll have also other nations. Who are they? Kush v'Put, whoever they are, we don't know, says. But the ones that we can identify and understand who they are, it is Paras. פרס הם אחים עם אלה, וכוש קרובים לאשור, ופוט למצרים, והם האומות שחשב למעלה, מצרים ואשור ואלם. So we see this is one party. And then you'll have the other party, and that is the party of the Rome party, or Bnei Edom, whatever you want to call them. And they will come where? They will come, he says here, שובבתיך ונתתי חכים בלחייך, והוצאתי אותך ואת כל חיליך סוסים ופרשים. Where would all that happen? מימים רבים תיפקד. This will be in the end of days, long days from now. באחרית השנים, in the end of days, תבוא אל ארץ משובבת מחרב, מקובצת מעמים רבים על ערי ישראל. This will be in a place that there will be a lot of different nations coming in the land of Israel. If you take a look, that's what's happening today. Many nations in the lands of Israel, Eretz Meshovevet Mecherev, place that constantly has wars. אשר היו לחורבה תמיד, ועם העמים מוצב, וישבו לבטח כולם. And then you should know, ועלית כשואה תבוא כענן, לכסות הארץ תהיה. Which means, כשואa means, says Rashi over here, כחושך המכסה את הארץ. It will come in and it will be like a complete darkness when that will happen. It will be also happening instantly, right away. When that will happen, it will happen instantly. And what will happen? So the nevuah over here is extremely harsh. והיה ביום ההוא, ביום בו גוג על אדמת ישראל, נאום אדוני אלוהים, תעלה חמתי באפי. Who will get involved? הקדוש ברוך הוא. He will be angry at that time. ובקנאתי באש עברתי דיברתי, אם לא ביום הוא יהיה רעש גדול על אדמת ישראל. There will be... רעש גדול usually refers to earthquake. But from what it seems over here, you could, the nevuah over here could be that you can interpret as an earthquake, but it says over here much more than that, as we'll see. It says over here, dever, dam, geshem shotef, avnei gabish, esh, kofit. I'm sorry?
Maybe bunker busting?
It's really from Hashem, so it doesn't need.
So it says here like this. היה ביום ההוא ביום גוג על אדמת ישראל, וקנאתי, יהיה רעש גדול על אדמת ישראל. רעשו, it will be something so powerful, רעשו מפני דגי הים, even the fish will be affected. רעשו מפני, even the fish will be affected. ועוף השמיים, even the birds in the sky will be affected. וחיית השדה וכל הרמס הרומס על האדמה. וכל האדם אשר פני האדמה, and the entire universe. Every person in the world. So that is something that's extremely powerful. It's not going to be affecting Eretz Israel and the close surrounding, but it seems like it's all over. ונהרסו הערים, even mountains will be destroyed. So imagine the power. Mountains will be destroyed. ונפלו המדרגות וכל חומה על הארץ תיפול. It seems like this is something that's going to happen throughout the world.
Earthquake can do that. Serious earthquake.
וקראתי עליו לכל הרעי חרב נאום אדוני אלוהים חרב איש באחיו תהיה ונשפטתי איתו בדבר ובדם וגשם שוטף ואבני אל גביש אש וכופרית אמטיר עליו ועל הכפיו ועל עמים רבים אשר איתו. Something that's extremely first of all, it seems like it's universal, extremely powerful. What could that be? In the nevuah of Zechariah, in the end, all these things we read mamash on Sukkot, that is very interesting. It says over here the following. זכריה י"ד הנה יום בא להשם וחולק שללך בקרבך. יום בא להשם, רש"י says, חביב לקדוש ברוך הוא. Hashem likes that day. The day of redemption, the day of revenge, the day of the final retribution. ואספתי את כל הגויים אל ירושלים למלחמה. Oh, everybody will come to Yerushalayim, to the war. So interesting. ונלכדה העיר, ונשסו הבתים, the houses will be destroyed. It says over here, והתבזזון בתיה, they will be looted. הנשים תשכבנה, ויצא חצי ער בגולה, ויתר העם לא יכרת מן העיר. ויצא השם ונלחם בגויים ההם, כי יום ילחמו ביום קרב. Hashem will go to fight a war on that day. And then Hashem will stand, עמדו רגליו ביום ההוא על הר הזיתים, אשר על פני ירושלים מקדם, ונבקע הר הזיתים. The הר הזיתים, the mountain, will be split. מחציו מזרחה וימה, גיא גדולה מאוד. הוא מש חצי הר צפון וחציו נגבה. And so on and so forth. What it says over here is just unbelievable because it says, והיה ביום ההוא לא יהיה אור יקרות יהיה קיפאון. וקיפאון. Which means the way it's explained in Rashi over here, there would be, and other mefarshim, is that there's not going to be day, on that day, there would not, the sun would not shine. Which means, it says here, ביום ההוא לא יהיה אור יקרות, the אור היקר, which is the אור of the sunlight, would not shine, וקיפאון, which means all the other constellation would not work. Which means, let's say, the star that brings some light, the moon that brings some light, everything will be shut down. That's how the Malbim explains. לא יהיה אור השמש שהוא אור עצמי, אור יקר. The sunlight, which is an important, חשוב light, would not shine. ולא אור הירח וכוכבים שהם רק מקבלים האור. That also would not shine on the land. והיה יום אחד הוא יוודע להשם לא יום ולא לילה והיה לעת ערב יהיה אור. Which means everything will be distorted at that time. And then it says over here the terrible war that will take place, or the terrible plague that will take place. It says, זאת תהיה המגפה, this will be the plague, אשר יגוף השם על כל העמים, אשר צבו על ירושלים. This will be the plague on all the nations that came to ירושלים. עמק בשרו, the flesh would be hamek. What's hamek? Deteriorating. והוא עומד על רגליו. While he was standing, the bodies started deteriorating, melting. ועיניו תימקנה, the eyes will be melting. ועיניו תימקנה בחוריהם, שונות תימק בפיהם. Which means, it says over here, והיה ביום ההוא תהיו מהומת אדוני רבה בהם, והחזיקו איש יד רעהו, ועלתה ידו על יד רעהו. He holds the hand of his friend, and all of a sudden, he's coming to help him. He's coming to help his friend that's deteriorating, and while he's helping, his hand will be detached. He's holding only a hand. And so on and so forth. He keeps on going over here and going and going. You see how the end, after we learned and we saw the prophecies of things that are happening in front of our eyes, this is afterwards. This is the next scenario that's going to happen. This is mamash, the final, that Hashem is just taking revenge and taking care of everything that needs to be taken care of. It's very scary, scary things. And then the Midrash Tanchuma brings down the following, that in the end of days, I bring it over here, the Midrash Tanchuma says, the Yalkut Shimoni, Yeshayahu Remez Taf Tzadik Tet, says the following. Rabbi Yitzchak said, in the year when King Mashiach reveals himself, all the kings of the world are in conflict with one another. King of Persia, Iran, provokes another king of Arabia, whoever that is. And the king of Arabia goes to Edom for advice. The king of Persia returns and destroys the entire world. As we saw, the war would be between Paras and Edom. So he will be able to, it seems like he will have by that time a nuclear power. It could be, many say that could be that Iran already have nuclear power. They don't. The assumption is that not, but nobody really knows. It could be that they do. The king of Persia returns and destroys the entire world. All the nations of the world are in turmoil and distress. Israel is in turmoil and distress and ask, where do we go? Where do we go? And then Hashem says to them, my children, do not fear. All that I have done, I only have done for your sake. Why are you afraid? At that time of the redemption have come, and there is no need for fear. In that time Hashem will reveal the light of the Mashiach and the light of Am Yisrael. And then it says the following. It says over here that the redemption, the final redemption, would not be like the redemption of Mitzrayim. Because the redemption of Mitzrayim afterwards, there was still Sheibud Galuyot afterwards, Sheibud Malchuyot. But this redemption would not have Sheibud Malchuyot. The redemption of Mitzrayim was it was a harsh redemption. Am Yisrael had to suffer through the redemption. But in this one, it will be an easy one, a pleasurable one for Am Yisrael, and a good one. So this is Nevuah of Nechama that we found in Yalkut Shimoni. And really this comes with a few of Ma'amarei Chazal that explain to us that in the end of days, there will be, Odo Yeite Velo Achmine, right? Lo easy. But this, the final, could be, but could be what it says over here is that, in the end of this, could be that it's after, could be it's two stage. We're going now to the harsh stage. But this is the real final stage, what Yalkut Shimoni speaks about. That could be. And it could be that there'll be really a selection at the end of the age, just like there was a selection, some say like that there was a selection in Mitzrayim. Chamushim Yatzu, What does it mean חמושים? אחד מחמישה, אחד מחמישים, אחד מ-500, which means the rest that didn't want the redemption didn't make it. So over here could be that the final redemption would also be in that aspect like that, and those that go out, those that are selected, those that are interested in being in the camp of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so to speak, will have the easy redemption, as Yalkut Shimoni explains over here. Chazak Baruch.